Hi everybody, Vanquished Angel here, and today I will be taking on a new video. Questions that no atheist can answer. This is by Incognito Islamic Productions and is posted by Love Allah 328. Right, so let's begin this bad boy.
What are the questions that no atheist will be able to answer?
I don't know. That's what I'm here for.
A. How did existence emerge out of no space and no time? How can an atheist assume that his atheism is valid when the moment of the start of existence is a stark proof on the creativity of the Creator and his ability to originate existence?
Well, actually, that's explained by the process of evolution. If you're talking about like the Big Bang Theory, that's entirely possible. And basically life is just a bunch of electrochemical reactions and impulses that eventually did work out into life. That's actually not that far-fetched. Actually, it's kind of common. They're able to almost produce life right now in a lab, so it's able to be done. They got the amino acids, and they're getting very close. If you're talking about space itself, that may be a little bit more logical to ask that question of how did existence emerge out of no space and no time, but there still really is no time. We're just traveling around the sun, and we use that as a reference to base human concept of time off of, but time still isn't a thing. It's just not. It's basically not a thing. It's just something we created. That's not exactly proof. How did the Creator get here? Did he just will himself? But there still had to be his will. There had to be something. Even for the Creator. Before the Creator.
B. How did no life transform into life? How did matter mutate from lifelessness into living cell? With all our techniques and advancements, we cannot, till this very moment, originate the simplest form of life. So how can we explain the origination of life in the dead matter? Wouldn't we have been at least able to originate a form of life that supersedes the one that originated in the dead matter by at least 1,000,000 times?
No, we're just not that advanced in science yet, but we're getting awfully close. When that does happen, are you going to admit it then? That your religion is not valid? When they finally do that? So that's kind of how that question works. You're saying, well, since they haven't been able to do it, then this. But then when we're able to do it, are you going to switch or are you going to change? We do know how it happened. We can prove how it happened, actually. Chemical reactions cause things and started evolution. It's just kind of the way it works. And it might be actually more common than just our planet. We don't know yet. We're still learning. So you can't ask us to provide an answer for something that we're not technologically advanced enough to learn yet. However, we do know enough to tell you we are getting there. We will be able to do it. Unless some crazy theist nut-so thing happens where they blow up the world before we get that far. Yeah, so we're getting there. And, when we do, I fully expect you to drop your religion then.
C. How can the atheist argue against the annihilation of all mankind? What is the rational, substantial, and scientific evidence an atheist can present to prove that annihilation of all mankind is a mistake? The material world knows no right and wrong, so annihilation of mankind must be equal to keeping them alive from their perspective.
That was really kind of confusing. The annihilation of mankind to me means to wipe them out. They wouldn't survive if they were wiped out. That just doesn't make any sense to me at all. I can argue against it. I think what's going to happen is that we are going to cause it in our foolishness, and mostly on the account of theists. We're going to destroy our own world, and we're going to create those 7 horsemen, essentially, the Bible predicts. But it's not going to be angels sent from heaven. We're going to cause it. We're going to cause it by pollution. We're going to cause it by greed. We're not going to cause it by committing the sin and then God sends them down. It just so happens this supposed sin, that's an effect of that sin, not through God, but through our material world. So for instance, you're so greedy, you're going to build all these factories and pump all these chemicals out into the air because you're so greedy you don't want to clean it up, and that's going to cause disease in little children because they have to inhale it, and it's going to kill the crops and the livestock, and then people are going to be starving. That's how it's going to happen. We're going to poison our own world. And a lot of this, and I hate to say this, but from my perspective, is theists that are actually doing this. They don't see a need to preserve the world because their God is going to either magically clean it for them, or their God is just going to destroy it anyway. So they don't see a point. They don't see that they're actually guilty of the very things the Bible warns against, that it's actually them. So to me, I think mankind in their stupidity is going to cause it without God's interference. If there is a God, I think that's beautifully set up, honestly, and I think that's closer to what God meant than what a lot of theists believe God meant. And yes, I understand that Allah is just another word for God. It's the same God as the Christians.
D. Atheism assumes that human beings are just animals who came into existence after a long and slow sequence of evolution from meaner beings. So what if a higher being came into existence? Will it have the right to put us all in cages and use us as lab rats? The Darwinist answer that we derive from matter is yes. So, what's the purpose from protecting mankind or providing them with meaning or purpose when it comes to atheism? Atheism here is unable to explain the reality of man.
No, actually you were seeing that already with people objecting against using animals for testing and stuff like that. That we do have that kind of conscience and that wouldn't happen. But the way it seems to be happening is that the earth is melding. We don't really have to worry about that happening with Homo sapiens too much, as it did in the past, and that we are well aware has happened in the past. Due to the Denisovians and the Neanderthals and others, we do know that humans did coexist with other hominid species and that we killed them. We know that, or actually we bred with them too. So we are aware of that, but what's happening is, instead of being separate, in order to evolve differently for such a situation to happen, we have to be separate. For hundreds of thousands of years. That means Australia would have to go hundreds of thousands of years with no intimate contact with people from outside, no changing, no people visiting, no nothing. And then they would evolve on a separate path. That would make potentially a superior or less superior being out of them. Therefore, then your question might somewhat be valid, but what's preventing that from happening is the fact that we mix and intermingle all the time. That means all of our evolution, black, white, Arabic, Chinese, all of our evolution is intertwined together as a whole. And I view that as a very beautiful thing. Are we evolving? Yes. And if you're going to argue against evolution, go get yourself some bacteria, some sort of flu virus or strep virus, and, don't quite kill it with antibiotics, but treat it with some antibiotics and then let it live. And within a few generations, it will develop immunity to those antibiotics. This is evolution. Then you would have witnessed the transition and the effect, and you can do that within a day. So we know it's there because we can see it. It's tangible. It's not deniable. It's not really refutable at this point. You can, but your refuting it really actually holds no water. We're to the point where we know already. Just to touch on that, it's because we have ethics and we don't need a book to tell us what our ethics are. We have morals and we don't need a book. And you're probably going to say morals, and maybe I'll touch more on that later because that might be one of the other questions. I haven't watched this video yet. But I believe morals are essential to human survival.
E. What if, according to evolution, we proved that one race is higher than the other? Will the higher race be entitled to transform the lesser race into used matter, as we do with the lesser insects or animals? Again, the Darwinist answer is yes. This very argument is enough to obliterate atheism from any mind that utilizes common sense. since the only criteria to judge who is better than who is the criterion of God-fearingness, not by color or strength.
Okay, so we kind of already answered that on the last question, and the answer is no. First off, we're on an evolutionary pattern together. So we're going to evolve at about the same. And so there will be no lesser or higher being than the other. Then to argue on another level, lesser and higher beings is only a matter of perspective. Right now we do have racism issues. One race sees itself higher than the other, and that's racist. So there are Africans that see themselves as better than white, and there are white that see themselves as better than Africans. The truth is neither one of us are better. We're each adapted to our environments, and that's our differences. So white people are adapted to live in colder climates like in Europe. We can also digest milk. That made another food source and allowed us to absorb more vitamins that we wouldn't get due to the limited exposure to the sun. Whereas the Africans, they're darker skinned. They can run around in the desert of Africa or the jungle, depending on which part, and be in direct sunlight for long periods of time, and they don't develop cancer like white people do, because that's their environment. That's what they've evolved to be around. So neither one is better than the other, but each one is better suited for the environment they came from. So that's kind of the point. A Neanderthal has always been perceived to be stupid, but it turns out from studies of the skulls of Neanderthals, they actually had a larger brain capacity than what we did, or what we do. So arguably they were smarter. Now maybe they weren't smarter in the terms of using tools and things, but it is believed, though not proven yet, that they were smarter when it comes to control over their own body. So that does not mean we are better or they are better, it's just our intelligences were different. It is believed we have more gray matter or more imagination. Okay, so I have a really big problem with that criterion there of God-fearingness. Isn't he supposed to be loving and all-embracing and stuff? And I don't get the whole dramatics of it. Like, if he's supposed to be loving, then we shouldn't have to fear him. I mean, you can make up any excuse there you want to. It's really kind of just an excuse. And really, that's stupid. I'm not understanding the dramatics of why God or Allah would create all these people, all these souls, knowing, because he's omnipotent, so he knows everything before it happens, knowing that a lot of them aren't going to follow him. So he creates them specifically the way they are and not going to follow him just so he can throw them in a pit of fire or something. That doesn't make any sense, and it's awfully sadistic. So if there is indeed a God, I think it's right that we question. I think God would understand that we did question, and I think God would embrace our questions. And I think God laughs at the stupidity of a lot of his followers, like those that go blow themselves up doing something stupid, and I don't think they make it into heaven.
F. Atheists argue that morals are relative, meaning can be seen from more than one perspective. So, honesty can be better than betrayal, or betrayal can be better in some cases. Yet, when confronted with their own trials, they claim outright that morality is objective, and that things like honesty or betrayal are absolute. Because if morals are relative, then immorality makes no sense, since we will never be able to set a line between morality and immorality. This is definitely a clear contradiction, because if morality was objective and absolute, then this law of morality must have had a lawgiver, the will of Allah, and divine accountability. If morality was relative, then no atheist must complain from immorality or even comprehend its concept.
That is incorrect. You see, in my process of belief here through the evolution that morals evolved because humans are pack animals. We band together, and that's how we survived. That's how we survived Africa with all those big cats and all those big creatures trying to eat us, much more powerful than us. A, we were smart, but B, we also banded together. And C, we also worked with other animals too. So humans and wolves hunted together, and it was mutually beneficial. The wolves would corner the bigger creatures, the humans would kill it and cut it up, and then we'd feed the wolves. That's how dogs came into play. So morality is based off of a set of instincts or culture around a social species like humans that we develop in order to protect our little group or our group of people, our tribes. So morality really is based off of what benefits that group of people, and that's kind of our culture as well. So for instance, in Islam, in certain areas, women cover themselves, basically from head to toe. There could be multiple reasons for that it developed in their culture. Maybe to protect women or to oppress them. It depends on what perspective you have and that you're looking at it from. But ultimately, morals develop within that culture and that group of people and their sort of decided best way to survive. So yeah, just to finish addressing that, no. If it's based off morality, then it could be objective. But if it's based off of the survival of the people, that part of it is objective. But when it becomes culture, it's subjective. And it's both. So unfortunately, your little mincing of words there isn't really fully defining what it actually is.
G. How did the amazing constants of physics emerge? All of these constants entail very intricate differences that must never vary, even by the slightest or minutest fraction, or the whole universe would collapse. For instance, the cosmological constant is fine-tuned to 120 decibel places, and if it was 1 decibel more or less, the whole universe would collapse. This precision proves that accuracy of a great maker, noting that the constants are numerous in physics and all of them are intricately precise.
Well, not exactly. Just because we don't know how or why it's done yet does not exactly mean that there was a creator that did it. There's a lot of things that could apply to that at one point in time we didn't know. For instance, you could have said 300 years ago that you prayed above a body and they got over a cold, praise the Oompa Loompas that live on Mars. And it would have seemed logical, and you probably would have taught that to your children because you had proof. But nowadays we know there's an immune system that did it. So back then they might have asked, well, how did that happen? It was so blah 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 and perfect and whatever. And today we know, oh, it happens because of immune systems. This is how it works. Because we took that time to learn. So if any time somebody asked a question like this, if we just stopped looking into it and made the assumption that it was some greater or more powerful being, we wouldn't have cures for diseases today. We wouldn't probably even have cars. There's a lot of things we wouldn't have because we just stopped questioning. So it's important to question. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a God doing it just because. There could be 150 million rhymes or reasons that we don't know yet. One of them is potentially God. But more often than not, it's probably going to be something else.
H. How did the genome emerge within the living cells? A code must require a coder, and this genome designates what each cell will be used for. Doesn't this prove that there is a unique maker dictating very specific codes?
Not actually. Evolution does that. We see that actually, so we know that. Evolution corrects itself as it goes. Again, going to the bacteria, that bacteria alters its genome to make itself resistant to antibiotics. That takes a few generations. That's called evolution. That's how it works. That the genome is constantly adapting to survive, constantly and all the time. So it's not proof of a creator.
I. Where did morality and values come from? When it comes to atheism, atheism sees the universe as a tumultuous sea of atoms that makes no sense and have no purpose, which was one of the driving motives to immorality and depravity. But since morality does exist, then atheism is invalid. To sum up our argumentation against atheism, since there is light, then there has to be a source for this light. Since there is shade, then there has to be a body causing the shade. Since there are intricate objects starting from the quarks and ending with the galaxies, then there has to be an originator. The Quranic argumentation is the strongest ever. Do you not see how those who dispute Allah's signs are turned away from the right path? Those who reject the book, and that with which we sent our messengers, shall soon know. Translation of the meaning of the Quran, chapter 40, verses 69 and 70. How then can you turn away? What are your proofs? The atheist has nothing but believing in trivialities and impossibilities.
Okay, so you're saying that because there's morality, then atheism isn't valid. That's not 100% true. Morality is established in multiple ways, not just God. Some of us don't need God to tell us how to behave ourselves. We don't need a book to decide how to be kind to our neighbor. I mean, if that's the only reason why you're being kind to your neighbor, you're kind of a pathetic person. So, let's get to this. Again, it has to do with survival. Humans are pack animals. And pack animals bond together. We protect each other. We do things for each other because that's how the group survived. That's how we lived. That's how life survives. A mother watches over her children and nurtures them until they're ready to leave. That's how this happens. And so morality is really based off of what it is, what it takes for the group to survive, not necessarily the individual, and how to protect that group. And so yes, every once in a while, or a lot of times, a person acts immoral, but the group, which is what I'm getting at, corrects or attempts to correct that behavior. Thus, there's morality. And that's what we base our laws off of. And that's what we base a lot of things off of. And I don't think that this whole mess of atoms doesn't necessarily make no sense or have no purpose. As a matter of fact, what a wonderful purpose it is to be here in just that sense. Like, amazing. It just makes life so beautiful, so unique, that all this scientific stuff has happened and led to us right here, right now. It's not purposeless at all. There is definitely some sort of life purpose behind this, and we got this one moment right now to use and to do and to take advantage of and do the best that we can with it. Therefore, we do have purpose. Our purpose is guided by that which life survives, by which our morality has come into existence by our instincts and survival in our environments. That's where our purpose comes from. We are curious, we explore, we want to know, we want to cure diseases, we want to help each other. This is our purpose. And just to touch up on that immorality and depravity, I've looked into religion for many, many years. And one thing that I can tell you is in those areas where religion is the strongest, is the areas where there's more rape, more drug use, more child sex trafficking, more child molestation, more child pornography, more kidnapped children, more divorces, more infidelity. All of this stuff is higher in areas with concentrated religion or religious control into the government. So in America, that's the Bible Belt. Overseas, that's where Islam is the strictest. That's where it is. And that's statistically, that's true and has been proven time and time and time and time and time and time and time again. That's not a refutable fact. That is fact. That is the way it is. And the reason why stuff like that happens in scientific belief and in my belief is because you are depriving the essence of who you are. You are going against human nature. And this is causing problems. It's causing pain for other people and for yourself. So take that as you will. Not exactly correct. No, we have a lot of proofs. We have science, and science is constantly proving different things all the time. I mean, you can deny it all you want, but you're probably alive at some point because of this science. I will give this to you. You did a much better job with your argumentation than other videos. Also, Islam and Christianity are virtually the same religion.